Well, we want to officially welcome y'all. This is Navigating Life's Transitions, and this is something we're really excited to share with you because it's a foundation to all of emotional healing and mental health. We kind of feel like it's an opportunity to really have a minute, check in a little bit. We're coming into the holidays, so it's a good time to sort of talk about these things. The workshop in itself is going to be about 90 minutes with the last 30 minutes an opportunity for Q&A, although Vicki and I will stay on as long as you have questions. So we would love to hear from you. We would love for you to interact with us in the chat if you have any questions that come up during the workshop. And then please also put them up in the chat. We'll address them in the Q&A. We love questions. We welcome them. And so we're really just glad to have you here, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome. I'm very excited about this webinar. We do a monthly webinar, and this month it's on transitions, and we're really excited about this theme. It's a very important theme, and we want to share this with you because we feel like this is very likely the missing piece to emotional freedom. So we want to really welcome you to being here. You are probably here because you have faced or have recently faced a life transition of some kind. Maybe it's a new season. I'm going to be letting people in here. Maybe it's a new season, a big life change, something that can bring both excitement and uncertainty. That's how these transitions are. So today we are really excited to dive into how we can find true emotional freedom through transitions, because transitions are hard. They can be difficult.
Yeah.
So by the end of this session, we want you to be encouraged that you will discover a missing piece. These are tools to help you to make peace with your past and step forward with confidence and joy. And we will also talk about processing our emotional responses, really, to life's transitions, and share with you how emotional recovery is possible and that we can actually transform each new season of life and really embrace that.
Yeah, it's kind of a neat process because you might want to be thinking about, all right, am I in the right place? Is this the right webinar for me? And so let me just sort of go through a couple of things with you. This is the right place for you if you're feeling the weight of a life transition of any kind. And you should know also in that process that you're not alone. All of us are in some type of transition. It's just a natural state of our human experience. And so we're really here to just kind of gather around and have a conversation about how to find peace, freedom, clarity through some of life's biggest transitions. And these transitions, some of them you might kind of think of and they might seem very obvious. Others are not as obvious. For example, moving is a transition. It's a loss. It's you're confronting a new life stage. And when you are going through these life stages, it's normal to feel conflicting emotions. I mean, for example, you could be, let's say you hate where you live right now, you hate the house, you hate the neighborhood, the city, everything, and you move to like your dream location, your dream house. It's like, oh my gosh, it's a dream come true. Even then, even though you're moving from someplace bad to someplace amazing, it's still a transition. There's still a process that is going to take place. And we'll go into more detail a little bit later, but it's just important to understand that it's normal to feel conflicting emotions. And transitions are what brings out things in us that we may not know how to deal with. It's just a way to explore how we break free from the emotional blocks that really keep us from thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are here to say and to share that we feel like we can really help transform your journey. And this is why, because what we've discovered and what we have used and how it has helped us. So Dan and I are both advanced grief recovery specialists. Between us, we have a combined 25 years, maybe even a little bit more of experience. We've been doing this for a long time. Um, and thank you for your note over there. There's so many things going on, trying to stay focused. So, but we are really excited because this was so life-changing for us. It literally was. And we have gotten the honor to guide literally thousands of people through this process and through life's toughest changes to find true healing. And we know that through the grief recovery process, we are recognized as leaders in emotional recovery and life transformation. And we've gotten to witness this incredible truth that when people get free from the unresolved grief in their lives, then they are free to experience the fullness of where they are going. This
Yeah.
is a very powerful statement. The next slide. Yes. Unresolved grief is undelivered communication of an emotional nature. This is a mouthful. This is worth writing down. If this, especially if this is new to you, because you'll probably go, what? What exactly does this mean? So this is very, very powerful. It's undelivered communication. Have you ever been in a situation where you have a confrontation that you need to have with someone and you think about that, you think about the conversation, and you think about what you would say? Those are undelivered communications. And my aha moment with this was really understanding how many things in our lives create grief. And when I remember when I first went to a group meeting to learn about what grief recovery was, and I heard this, and I realized that I've been grieving my whole life, definitely since I was like a teen, my young adult life, and I had no idea how to even put into words what I was feeling. And all I knew is that this little sentence right here resonated so profoundly with me. And I knew that it was touching something deep inside because all the therapy, all the programs that I did never even touched on this place where I was going to learn how to connect to what I was feeling and be able to process it was very, very unfamiliar to me. And I knew there was something very powerful here.
Yeah. So you might be wondering like why we're here in a sense, like why we're doing this. And I think it's kind of like one of those situations whenever you find something that changes or transforms your life, you want to know more about it. You want to find out how do I get more involved? How do I go deeper into this? And so for Vicky and myself, it's just something that we walked this path ourselves and experienced such transformation in that in our own lives individually, but also in our marriage even. And so as a result, we've spent more than 20 years helping others experience similar transformation in their relationships. And that's why we're committed to your transformation. So before we kind of really get too far along in this, I just want to introduce ourselves sort of a little more formally. I'm Daniel, and this is my wife, Vicky Hagedorn. And we are very intimately familiar with the pain of unresolved grief. We're very familiar with the frustration of self-sabotage and the heartache of broken relationships. But the thing is that we discovered a way out. We discovered a way out, and that way out was grief recovery. And so in the heartache of some of these relationships, self-sabotage, unresolved grief, this way out led us to experience healing and growth and transformation. And in my own life, I mean, I'm old enough to have experienced a number of transformations, some of them good, some of them bad, some of them everything in between. But in the process, I discovered my childhood trauma, which I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about, but just an abusive childhood, being adopted, and then my mom having an accident which left her brain damage. There's a series of transitions that happened, and the net result of those transitions were I learned to disconnect from my own life in order to survive. And that disconnection is something that bled into my marriage. And if you're married, then you know how completely disruptive disconnection is. And frankly, it's disruptive to any relationship that you have. And it really wasn't until I did the deep healing of grief recovery that I started to experience a transformation, that I actually started to heal and experience change, because no amount of behavior modification was going to ever change that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so powerful. Yes, so this is the path to healing. And a little bit about my journey, like many of you, I've carried wounds from my past. Wounds I didn't even really realize were holding me back. I was such a go-go, check off my list kind of a person that I would be like literally limping along on one arm, like, and I was like, no, I'm still going. I'm still alive. And I really had no idea how how much I was carrying. And I even to the point where when someone told me about this, I was like, I don't need that. And I needed it so badly. And
Mhm.
I found I was stuck in these same painful cycles and feeling very hopeless to change. And my relationships were very strained, especially I couldn't break free from patterns of addiction, codependency, and self-sabotage. Huge in my life. And I really just thought my only choice was to learn how to modify my behavior enough to get past my own shortcomings. And that was really my best case scenario. And even therapy and programs told me that was the truth. And
Mhm.
so I really feel like hope happened when I went through this process. I didn't expect it to be what it was for me, but I felt like there was light coming through, kind of like this picture. This picture really, when I saw it, I thought, wow, that's really powerful. And I really got the tools to confront deeply rooted wounds that were really holding me, almost like tethering me to the behaviors that I had. Because what we've discovered is the behaviors are our coping mechanisms. They're not the problem. They're the symptom of a deeper problem. But that is the beginning of that. So we're excited to jump into more of the hope and more of the process.
Yeah, and that's really what we want for you guys as well. Because the big breakthrough in a sense, if you want to call it that, is when you realize that unresolved grief is at the root of almost all of our emotional struggles. We're not going to say everything, because nothing is everything, but it is such a huge part of just about everything. And especially when you start to realize that grief is not just about losing a loved one or divorce. Those are the biggies that we think of. And certainly those are losses, absolutely. But really it's the ending of any familiar way of life. Like I mentioned earlier about the move, even if it's like the best move ever, you're leaving someplace you can't stand and you're moving to a place you've always dreamed of, that's still a transition. And every transition, even the positive ones, could be losing a job, moving, seeing our kids leave, which is my wife and I are dealing with the grief of that, like the emptiness. But that all brings grief, and so I found that the best way to really embrace where we're going is to get emotionally complete with what is ending. And that is really truly where the real healing begins. And so obviously the question is, well, great, how do we do that? How do we get emotionally complete with what is ending? And I'm glad you asked, because that leads to the next one.
Yes. So we're going to talk tonight about this way forward. And it's really a three-step path to emotional recovery. We're going to kind of simplify it and show you in these three steps. So the first one, and this process really is what gives us a clear and effective process. And there's three steps. And the first one is identifying the emotions that hold you back. This is very, very powerful. Sometimes you don't even realize that what it takes to identify these because we kind of go through life not identifying them. Then we dig into the survival mechanisms that you develop to get through it all, to literally emotionally survive. We develop these. And then finally, we're going to show you how to rewrite those patterns and you'll understand how to create a new foundation that will allow you to approach any transition in your life from a place of peace and resilience.
Yeah. So let's take a look at this first step, identify your hidden emotions. This is really what we're talking about here is your emotional truth. And quite honestly, it's not as easy as it sounds. Some of us are carrying around emotions that go years and years back. And
Yeah.
we don't even know it. We don't even realize it. They're just sort of under the surface and we're carrying them around with us. We experienced maybe a trauma or loss in our childhood. And it's almost certain that we were not taught how to connect to our emotional truth or even process it. And so we learned, whatever we learned, by modeling the ways that adults in our life handled transitions, however they handled their loss or hard things, whatever cliches they repeated around a loss, that's what we learned. And the way they expressed their emotions or didn't express their emotions, that's what was modeled. So I just want you to maybe take a second to just pause and think about what was modeled for you in your home growing up. What was the, if the adults that you were around, what would they have titled their class on handling grief? What would that have looked like? What would the curriculum in that class have been? And so it just if you want, if you're open to it, you can share with us in the chat just some of the things that, what was modeled for you in your home growing up. And obviously it's possible that when you have guidance, when you have a safe place to process those emotions, then healing is absolutely possible. This isn't like this lost cause. It's just that we have to identify it first before we can really go any further. And like I said, this isn't as easy as it sounds because our emotional truth um, is difficult to connect to. In fact, we've literally learned to survive our lives by not feeling our emotional truth. And that's what brings us to step number two.
Yeah, thank you guys for putting some things in, just something to really think about how you learned, because what was modeled for you is really what goes in. It's what you learn, and what we learn by experience is always going to be stronger than anything we learn intellectually later. We might think, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, but when the rubber meets the road and something happens, we're going to respond and react the way that we were conditioned, in a sense. Yes, thank you guys for sharing. Yeah, don't be so emotional. Thanks, Monique. Calm down.
Yeah. Or
Love it.
joking around. Yeah.
Yeah, don't be sad. Yeah, making everything like it was a joke. Yeah. So powerful. Thank you guys. Yes. So number two, understanding your survival mechanisms. Oh, I'm trying to move this over. Yes. We call the emotional model in our household normal. It's hard to identify them. That's interesting. Yeah. Stuff or deny. Yeah, so good.
I want to just speak to that. I think that's a really good point to make because all of our lives, and it doesn't matter what they are normal. That's our normal. I remember having a client and they were sharing like this, well, I didn't really have very much loss in my life. I mean, I had a little bit, and they started sharing like this horrific abuse. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, it like breaks your heart, but that was their normal. So they were
Yeah.
just kind of reciting it like you and I would talk about, the scores of the football game last weekend. And they were just kind of, well, there's this. I didn't really, it was really because that was their normal. I mean, that's how, disconnected we get, so I think that's a really good point about that.
Yeah. And I think that so often we think about grief and loss as death and divorce. And if we didn't experience a lot of that, we kind of think, I don't have a lot in my life. But it's
Right.
amazing when you think about what is actually loss. So, number two is understand your survival mechanisms. And this is where we really realize that we all learned survival techniques, mechanisms to get through painful experiences, and usually at a young age. But by the time when from 0 to 7, everything that's you're just filtering everything in. I should say you're just taking it all in like a sponge. You have no way to filter. So everything that's coming in is just planting it's kind of programming. It's just making itself in there. And so we don't really have a way to process those things. So we discover ways to survive emotionally in the home that we grew up in. And so they might have served us then, but what happens when you become adults is they do not serve you now. They keep you stuck. And not only are they not helpful, usually they're very harmful. They're very harmful. And when you can release these patterns, it's like literally like putting down a heavy load that you've been carrying. And you're free to approach life in a whole new way. And your coping mechanisms are not the problem. We're here to tell you that. Like
Yeah.
if you go to alcohol, drugs, food, sex, porn, um, scrolling, watching movies for like binge watching, the things that we go to for relief are not the problem. Focusing on the behaviors we go to provide that short-term relief only it will never bring healing. And what we focus on, we create more of. So what we have found is that it's not about the coping mechanisms, but
Yeah.
they're a very, very good indicator that something deeper is being triggered and you don't know what to do about it, or you don't know how to feel it or process it. So that's the powerful thing about it is that you can really see that there is something underneath, and the pain that is underneath those behaviors are what we want to really focus on. And that is what we focus on is the root, getting to the root of that. So that's what keeps us in those self-destructive and self-defeating habits. And that's what keeps us in a cycle of shame and discouragement. Um, Deetria, you know what? If you want to write out your question, that's cool, or wait until the end and we will ask any questions or write it down. But we definitely want to get to your question.
Yeah, definitely write it down because we want to answer that.
Yeah.
And so I think, what we're really getting at overall before we get into this last part is, you know, this is not about band-aids. This is
Yeah.
not about band-aids. This is about going down to the root of things, which is not always easiest, but it's always best. It's just like anybody that's ever gone out and tried to deal with weeds in their yard. I mean, you can get a weed whacker and trim off the top, but it's just going to grow back. It isn't until you just get in there and dig out all of those roots that you really are going to have a good lawn. Anyways, this is not gardening tips, so let's move on. Step number 3, you need to rewrite the script. And what do we mean by that? Well, a script is something that keeps us in our comfort zone, but also limits us in ways that we don't even realize. We're not even thinking about it. We're just sort of we're going by the script, right? We're not thinking about it in any way. It's just kind of on autopilot. And when you're able to let these scripts go, what happens is you create room for new possibilities. You actually create the emotional and mental foundation for a thriving future. And I'm not talking about, positive thinking or just, manifesting positivity. That's not what I'm talking about. You're not going to find healing by just focusing on the positive. Okay. But I will say that true emotional healing and true transformation isn't a mind shift. It's actually the result of meeting yourself deeply, honestly, and in all your shame until there is nothing left to hide and no more reasons to run. It's
Mm,
about healing the deep wounds that have created the habits so that you can live in freedom. And it's so sad because most of us live so trapped in layers of shame. And that shame is exactly what keeps us where we are. And this is where, so when we're talking about rewriting the script, we're talking about, healing the deep wounds that created the habits so that you can live in freedom. You can experience clarity in your life. You start to recognize the root of what's being triggered because of the changes you're experiencing, and then you can lean in and actually grow from it, right? It becomes like an obstacle, becomes a rung on a ladder to get over it. instead of an obstacle that just rolls on top of you and squashes you. It's a very different way to live. And that's what we're talking about when we say rewrite the script.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is another powerful sentence, a powerful idea to think about that unresolved grief is conflicting feelings caused by the end of a familiar pattern of behavior. And that is what a transition is. It's the end of something familiar, and it brings up conflicting feelings. It's so important to understand it because I feel like this explains it. It explains so much. Finally, a word for what you are feeling. And you have no idea. It's conflicting feelings. I'm conflicted. And that is literally the definition of grief, of unresolved grief. And it's amazing because the healing work of grief recovery, what it does is it gives you that ability for clarity so that when you, I don't know about you, but when I'm triggered by something, I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in my chest, my breathing. It's so weird. Sometimes if it's really intense, I can feel like almost heat, like it's like I can't really take a deep, full breath. And there's an anxiety that comes from that. And when we're triggered by things, and now I have learned that these triggers are an indicator. They're an indicator, and I have the tools to lean in instead of just reacting the way I used to react to something like that, which would be to go somewhere to get comfort, go away, go isolate, do I used to before I would go to alcohol. I'm 32 years sober, so that was something that I stopped long ago, thankfully. That was the beginning of my recovery journey, really. I found grief recovery after 10 years of sobriety, and wow, did that transform everything. But what I have found is that this is really an invitation to lean in when you're triggered by something. And it's an invitation to listen to your heart, and really you will have tools to hear what you have to say, to really get in touch with. Dan talked earlier about connecting to your emotional truth. We don't even realize that our emotional truth is under all those layers that he was
Mm.
talking about. And have you ever been in a situation where someone asks you, what do you want, or how do you feel, what, and you're just like, I have no idea, I don't even know, I don't even know how I feel or what I want. I don't want anything. I just want to go
Yeah.
away. It's
Yeah.
really so deep. And so it's an incredible indicator to lean in and listen to your heart and be able to navigate the season that you're in. Grieving is part of your journey.
Mm.
It's a promise in this lifetime that we are going to experience grief. We're going to experience loss. So it is part of our journey, and it leads to the possibility of being true to yourself in a way that you haven't experienced before, because most of us never learned how to grieve, like we were talking about, right? How did things, how was it modeled for you in your home? But we
Mm.
weren't taught how to process our emotions. In fact, we were usually taught that you really weren't supposed to, that your emotions are too big, too much. Um, even if you go to church, you're taught your heart is deceitful. Don't trust your emotions. I mean, in so many ways, you're taught to just shove it down.
Yeah.
And it's there. How do you do that? By keeping busy, by medicating, all these things. But it creates every kind of suffering in our heart. Unresolved grief is really like a core of the suffering of man. But every time you apply the tools, then you learn and you grow and you get to transcend places that you never thought you would. When you have vision and goals, next thing you know, you're experiencing it. And you're like, wait, what? What happened here? It's amazing.
It is a powerful experience. And the thing is that if you imagine for a moment being able to face any kind of change in life, retirement, moving, letting go of something important, and being able to do it with a sense of calm and confidence. No transition is ever going to be easy, but there is a way to do it. There is a way that things work. And so even if you're facing a global event, a heated political climate, a world terrorist event, anything that brings up fear or anxiety or uncertainty, take a moment and picture yourself feeling connected and grounded, right? You're free from the old patterns that used to weigh you down. You're ready to embrace the transition in life that's bringing with it a whole new perspective and clarity. And this is, by the way, we're not saying that you don't feel things. You're not like living in this weird zenness or something like that. This is not that. Okay. There is a difference. And what we're saying is you can feel emotionally free. You can learn how to process. You can learn how to attune yourself to your heart, and maybe in ways that no one has ever done for you before. And in that, you're experiencing incredible freedom. And that freedom is what gives you the ability to release the past and fully embrace the future.
Yes. And we want to just kind of help you to see this experience and the transformation that the grief recovery method brings. And that's why we do this and why we teach and offer personal coaching through the grief recovery program. Because we feel that this has been a game changer for us, no question. This changed everything. It changed, like Dan said, our marriage. It changed our communication. It changed my ability, even when I think about teaching grief recovery and becoming a coach in this way, there's no way that I would have been able to do it without the tools and the healing that I got and it was so profound for me that I went, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. It really was. I think the biggest thing was being present in the moment. And I
Mm,
heard that and I'll even say that. But when I got done with my first time going through, and I realized that I was able to be clear in the moment of how I felt. I had never been able to do that in my whole life. I had been going to therapy trying to learn boundaries for my whole adult life. And I was never able to understand them, let alone have them. And all of a sudden, I was able to process something and just go, wait a minute, I'm actually not okay with that. And I'm actually okay that you're mad at me or, like however deep it is, but it
right.
was so powerful. And I was amazed. And this program really, it's designed specifically to help you break free from emotional weights and face life's transitions with strength and resilience.
Mm,
So, what we want to do is tell you a little bit about it and how it changed our life.
yeah. So this is a little bit of a breakdown of your own path to healing and transformation. And that's, wow, surprise, the grief recovery method. I know you didn't see that coming. But it's something that like I said, for us, we believe it's absolutely the best program available to address these deep roots of unresolved grief, these deep wounds, and ultimately to create and experience a healthier life. And this program is something that it goes past the surface. It's giving you actual tools to address the heart of the issue so that you can experience a personal transformation for yourself that impacts not just you, but every relationship you have. And
Mm.
so these are the details of the grief recovery method. Basically, here's what it looks like. It's an 8-week one-on-one Zoom coaching program. We will work together with you to help you heal from these wounds that we've been talking about, to break free from your false and limiting beliefs, and basically everything else that we've been talking about up to this point. So we meet weekly on a 90-minute Zoom call. You'll have an ongoing path to support um, for with Vicky or myself throughout the 8 weeks together. This isn't like, oh, well, we meet once a week and then, hey, good luck, we'll see you next week. It's you have access because you know what? You never know when something is going to come up. That isn't like you can plan for it. Well, on Tuesday at 8:12 p.m., I'm going to have an emotional. You never know. So, anyways, it's important that you have that throughout the entire process. And we really believe this isn't just a program. It's really a path to healing and transformation that you've been looking for. So let me just take a moment to say that if you are here as one of our valued alumni, we would love to invite you to the next step of the healing journey of grief recovery, and that is the alumni sessions, which we'll touch on a little bit later.
So we want to help you experience this. And we want to help you to make this a reality in your own life because grief recovery is an action program that equips you with tools to process trauma, grief, and loss. And it's for anything and everything. It isn't limited to one particular type of loss. So as you move through the program, you experience gradual healing as you complete each step. And it's really, it's not just a course or information, it's an experience. And whenever you have something that's experiential like that, or experiential, it's going to go way deeper, and it's going to it's going to be more, gosh, what's the word? It's when you change on that foundational level, then you're able to really actually show up differently. And all of a sudden people are going to go, wow, that's, usually you don't engage, or you don't ask questions, or you don't follow through. It's amazing, all the different ways. I love that, Monique. Yeah, renewal. Thank you. Yes. And if anybody is, I know that there's a few of you on here that are alumni. We're always so happy to see you. And if at the end, I'd love for you to have an opportunity to share what you got as well from the process. So we know that the steps of work, and you go in each step. And so when we remember, what we talked about is, you want to get to that point where when you feel those familiar triggers and you feel overwhelmed, reacting with anger, shutting down, or even turning things like food, alcohol, substances, they will no longer hold the same power over you. It's amazing what happens when you're not focusing on trying to change those behaviors, but you're focusing on the root. And even physical responses like illnesses, migraines, exhaustion, back pain, like there's a lot of things that will manifest itself physically, and all of those will also begin to ease. It's an amazing thing. So we wanted to just show you a little bit about the program and the real value.
Yeah. And we're to be clear, we're not saying that, this is like a cure for migraines or something like that. It's just that, oftentimes there is an absolute connection. There's a great book called The Body Keeps Score, and there's an absolute connection with our emotions and our physical well-being. And so that's why a lot of times people going through this will experience improvement in those areas, although that's not like, we're not saying this is a cure for migraines or something like that. Um, but I think when you really consider what's at stake for a minute, you think about your relationships with other people. You think about just your general happiness, or how you envision your future. I think that's when you begin to see how valuable this program really is. I mean, you could spend several years and thousands of dollars on, could be therapy, self-help books, programs. There's a lot of great ones out there, but you would still not experience the transformation that's possible with the grief recovery method. Because like I said, it's literally going down to the roots of things. We're not interested in creating a better habit or behavior modification. It's going down to the root of these deep wounds. And so the real world value of this program is massive. And that's why we want you to experience it for yourself. So if you think about for a moment what it would be worth to avoid years of unnecessary struggle and heartache, and if you think about it realistically, you really can't put a price on emotional health and well-being. That's just one of the things that is, as they say in the MasterCard commercial, is priceless.
Yeah. Yeah. So think for a minute about the relationships that hold pain for you. Are there relationships in your life right now that hold pain, with somebody who's in your life, maybe someone who's passed away, that things were unresolved? Think about what relationships that you wish could be better, or at least different than they are right now. There's a lot of things in happening right now that is causing a lot of division among friends, among families. There's a lot of things going on, even globally. And think about what it would feel like to be able to process that, and to show up differently for yourself at home, in your work, in your business. And it's really about the people that mean the most to you. And really it's also about being able to be fully engaged in life. Yes, thank you, Monique. The Body Keeps the Score. Great, great book. A very intense book.
Yeah.
It's very rich. It took me a long time just to get through one chapter. It's got so much in there. But think about how that would feel, and what it would mean to feel fully engaged in your life. And let that sink in because it is absolutely possible. And it's also possible to be at peace even with things that aren't harmonious.
Right.
You want to have harmony in your own heart, and sometimes that is about having peace with someone that you maybe had to have a boundary and are not in their life anymore. Even that is a part of it as well. So we can only change ourselves. That's the only thing we can do. We
Yeah.
cannot change anybody else. That should be its own slide. Actually, we can only change ourselves. And so when you do that work of emotional healing, you get to see transformation in every area of your life. And it begins with yourself. It begins with yourself. And I want to really just make that and really focus on that because it's so powerful. You will gain an entirely new level of emotional resilience, one
Mm,
that allows you to be honest with yourself and other people in a respectful and honest way. Because without the clarity that comes from emotional maturity like this, it's really impossible to have boundaries because you can't process emotions in the moment when you're triggered. You can't. It's like something when you go into fight, flight, or freeze or fawn, you
mm.
can't process things emotionally because you are in a state, your whole physiological, whatever changes, and you just are in survive, and you can't even think clearly on what you need or what you need for this moment. So it's incredible. And have you ever looked back at a situation and wished that you would have responded differently?
Oh yeah.
I have done that a lot. Wish that I would have responded differently. Even wished why didn't I say that?
Yeah.
Why wasn't I even in touch with how that affected me or even being aware of maybe how something affected someone else? There's just so much that we wish we could do differently. And you'll be amazed at the clarity and the discernment that comes with this work. So here is what you get. This is what the process is. 30-minute consultation call that's valued at $100, an 8-week 90-minute Zoom call, ongoing support, like Dan said, valued at 1,200. Total value is 1,300. And so this process, and anybody here, we want to give you a special price. So Dan's
Just for
going to
showing
share.
up for the webinar is our way of saying thank you. So just try this thought exercise. Okay. If all this did was, right? If all this did was help you to heal the unresolved grief that's been holding you back from showing up as the person you've always wanted to be, wouldn't it be worth it? I mean, if all this did was equip you with tools to create a life where you were thriving and living in deeper connections with the people that you love, a place where you felt safe, connected, and emotionally grounded, wouldn't it be worth it? Imagine what your life could be like if those wounds were healed and you experienced this kind of transformation in those relationships. And the good news is you don't have to imagine this because this is something that grief recovery will do for you and so much more. And one of the things that I appreciate about grief recovery is this is not like a pie in the sky, like, oh yeah, no, this is like, no, this is a fundamental, this works. You show up and you do this and you give yourself to this and it works and changes happen. So let me go one step further. If you take a moment to consider what would be the cost of staying exactly where you are right now? What is the cost of not having anything be different than it is right now in this moment? What is the cost of continuing to struggle with self-sabotage or damaged relationships, unresolved grief, or anything else that you're going through? What if you saw this as an investment in you? What if you told yourself, you know what, you're worth it? Just something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And the special offer that we talked about is for anybody ready to take this step. We're offering $100 off the 8-week grief recovery and a free 30-minute consultation. And that's for with either Dan or myself. We both do this work, and we work one-on-one, so it would be one of us. And yes, Monique, putting on your oxygen mask, yes, so you can breathe again. And Michael, I definitely want to talk about your question in the after when we do the Q&A. That is definitely worth talking about. But here is what we want to offer this right now. So the best thing to do is to set up a call, and you will get an email. You will get our links for that. And we want to really create a personalized roadmap for you personally, because everyone is unique and everyone is individual, and you have experienced your life at 100%. So what we want to do is work with you individually. And if you are an alumni and you want to go deeper, you want to do maybe another relationship, or you want to do some coaching, breakthrough coaching with the tools, we would love to talk to you about that. And we can talk to you about the price for alumni work as well, because there's even deeper healing for you. We have seen that when people do more than one relationship, the healing goes deeper and deeper. It's kind of like when you think about, we get fragmented when we go through trauma and loss. And I believe that the power of this work is that we're pulling it all together. We're integrating those parts that have been wounded and fragmented. And so the more you do, the better. The more you do, the more integrated that you become, and very, very, very powerful.
Yeah. So I thought it would be worthwhile to just sort of share with you some of the questions that we've got from people about the program, because they might be questions that you have, and certainly if they aren't on this list, then definitely bring them up in the Q&A. But these are just some of the questions that we've gotten, where people will say, because you might have some of these same concerns. I'm not sure this will work for me. Well, I can tell you that everyone we've worked with who fully committed to the program and completed it has experienced transformation. It's something that I can attest to in my own life, and Vicki can attest to it in her own life. This isn't just like we're saying, well, theoretically, this is a great program. It's something we've done ourselves and taken a lot of people through, and again, seen this same kind of transformation in all of their lives. Another question or concern that we've heard is, I've tried everything. And I can hear the desperation in that. I
Yeah.
get it. I get it. It's like when you've done a lot of different things and you've invested time or money in something, and it's been, oh, this is sort of like the missing piece, and then it doesn't quite come through. It's very disappointing. It's very discouraging. I get it.
Yeah.
But I can tell you again, it's something different. This is actually going to the root. Again, this is not a behavior modification strategy. This is
Yeah.
actually going to the root. This is rewiring our thinking at an emotional and neurological level. We found out about this idea called neuroplasticity, which allows the brain to rewire itself. So this isn't like a pie in the sky kind of thing. We can actually think differently. That's a real possibility. Sometimes some other concerns we've heard is it's too expensive. And like I said, my only thing I think of is, well, what's it costing you to stay the same today, next month, next year? Everything that we learn costs something. And can you think of anything worth more than your own peace, your own well-being? And so, like I said earlier, this is really an investment in you first, but then also in your family and the other people that are in your life. Another question or concern we've heard is, I'm afraid to deal with my grief. Oh, does that make sense? I'm not going to sit here and put a bunch of sunshine on it. It can absolutely be a scary process. I mean, keep in mind that we have a whole series of survival mechanisms that are designed with one purpose, and that is to make sure we don't have to feel stuff that's super painful. All of our coping mechanisms, whatever it is we turn to for relief, it's all designed to help us not feel these things that we're now talking to you about. So I get it, but we are with you in this process every step of the way. This is not like a, hey, okay, we talked, good luck, we'll see you next week kind of a thing. This is when stuff comes up, we're in it with you. Um, Another one that we've heard is, why bring up the past when I just want to move forward? Again, oh yeah, I hear you. And I think probably Vicky and I have heard this one the most because for the reason I just talked about earlier, we've learned to survive by not feeling. And we're asking you to go through a process of processing those feelings you've worked really, really hard not to feel. But here's the truth: we don't move forward until we process our wounds, our grief, our losses. In fact, we stay exactly where we are. Our grief and losses stack up because if they're not processed, they don't go anywhere. And then at some point, we can only handle so much pain before we explode. And that's reality. And so I get it. I get it. And again, if you have any other concerns, please bring them up. But those, I just thought it would be helpful to just address some of the most common ones that we hear from people.
Yeah, definitely. And this is really kind of a visual. This is our grief recovery handbook. And we believe very strongly that there is nothing else like this out there. The the incredible results that the grief recovery program gets is something that you can see. You can check out our website, which is freedomfromgrief.com, and you can also check out the grief recovery method. I think it's griefrecoverymethod.org, or maybe it's .com. But you'll see they've been around for over 40 years, and we are in, I don't even know how many countries at this point. I know the book is in at least 8 different languages. I mean, this is
Yeah.
something, this isn't just me and Dan, coming to you from our house. This is a very well respected, time tested. They have been around a long time, over 40 years, and there isn't anything else like it. And I really just think, I always think how ahead of his time John was. John was the founder of the grief recovery method, and he discovered this while processing his own grief. He had lost his son at 3 days old. His son was born and then they lost him, and he had gone through so much loss. He was in Vietnam. He had so many things, and he was not able to function at this loss. And he couldn't understand why he was able to kind of handle all these things that happened, but this was, and that's when he really realized that grief is accumulative, and it
Mm,
just grows and grows. It makes me think of like you're underwater in something, in a boat or something that's sinking, and you have like an inch left of air to breathe, and that's all you can function in, and that's how overwhelming it can feel. And when you have all that, all of life stuff, it just builds and it grows. So it's very accumulative. And so that this we really feel like there is nothing else like it out there. And like Dan said, everything that we ask you to do, we do it first. We show you. I think that's one of the things that makes grief recovery different than traditional therapy as well, is that we really share our journey. And when you go to, and I think that's important, and why it works so well in this program is because there's a connection, and we talk a lot about there's no judgment. There's no judgment. And when we share kind of who we are and what we've been through, it gives you permission in a sense, I think, to say, wow, if you can share with me that stuff, I want to, I don't know. I think when you're open with someone, it really breeds other people to openness breeds openness kind of a thing. So it's
yeah.
very, very powerful. It's what sets it apart, really. And each session builds on the next, and it uncovers and it heals so much more than you can even imagine right now. The only resource that we use is the grief recovery handbook that gets sent to you right away. And this, like we said, it represents more than 40 years of research, and it really is considered the gold standard in recovery from grief and loss.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
It's pretty amazing. So just kind of think about it, if you're thinking about when to start this, I would say now. I
Yeah.
would say don't wait another day to start your journey to experience this healing and transformation. I think it's a powerful opportunity to change your life for the better, especially, as the holidays are coming up when, they happen. The holidays can be really challenging for any number of reasons. You will be amazed um, how different this holiday season can be with a new skill set to help you thrive in these areas of your life that have been really challenging. And so we just encourage you, just take the first step, book a consultation call, and we're ready to come alongside you and just talk through how this can really help you, just one-on-one. There's a quote that I love to always share. It's by James Sherman. He said, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." And so, like I said, I think the best time to start the journey is today because I believe everyone deserves to experience their best right now. And we would love to do this together with you. I will say one thing though, and I always like to put this in here. As much as I absolutely believe in this program, as much as I unapologetically support it and advocate for it and think it would be amazing for people, I also have to say that if somebody is kind of pushing you into this or sort of leveraging you in some way, like maybe it's a spouse who's like, well, you better go do this or that. And if this is not coming from a place of personal readiness, like I see the need to do this for me and I want to do this for me. If that's not the place you're in, if you're sort of doing to, you know, get someone off your back or to make someone else happy or because someone else is pressuring you, please don't do it. This program does not work well with coercion. You should not be doing this because you feel some sort of obligation to somebody else. You should do this because you want to experience the transformation for you and you want to do it for you. And I always like to say that because it's really important that it's about you and what you want and not what someone else wants or what someone else might be putting on you. But I just want to say thank you so much for your time. We appreciate how valuable it is, and we just want to answer any and all questions you have. There were a couple, I believe, that were in the chat earlier, but we will stay on this call as long as you have questions. So we've allocated 30 minutes, but we're happy to go longer. We also respect everybody's time. If you have to jump off, feel free to jump off whenever you need to. But we just want to let you know we're here to answer every last question that you have. So, honey, I think you have the question control thingy. So
Yes. And one thing Michael had asked, can this help me not be mad? I'm looking, yeah, stop being mad at my dad. Such a good question, Michael. And if you want to unmute and share anything on that, we'd love to hear.
So thank you. I'll confess it was more of a rhetorical question. I have a difficult time getting on these Zoom calls. I've been on a couple of them without really being upset at my parents and
Okay.
sort of the trauma in my, household of origin. And so then more of a rhetorical question in the sense that my reaction to, sort of being upset at my dad is so normal, such a routine thing that the opportunity, I guess, to go through something and finally be unburdened from that
Oh, yeah.
frustration, aggravation, pain, etc. Is just I don't know how to finish that, but ultimately that's where that was coming from.
yeah, no, I can tell you. I try to remember how much of this I've shared before, but I'll have to share it now. But growing up, I had a very difficult relationship with my dad. It was very verbally and physically abusive. A lot of that was he was just sort of taking out some of his frustrations that he was having to help take care of my mom. But it was very, very difficult. And I had a hatred for my dad. And I don't mean like, oh yeah, my dad made me mad. I mean, I knew where his gun was. I took his gun out. I flipped the chambers for about almost 3 years. And like, this is the day I take him out and then I'll take myself out. And that was like real for me. And every day His station wagon would pull in the driveway. He had a diesel station wagon, so I knew when he was pulling in, and it would pull in, and I'd have that moment every day for 3 years. I'm like, okay, this is it, this is it, this is it. And then inevitably I'd put the gun away, go into my room, and hope I didn't have to talk to him. And my whole life was built around, how do I have my dad the least possibly involved in my life as conceivably be, and still have to share a house with the man. I mean, I hated him. And this process unlocked that hatred. And for 20 years I had, and again, my dad didn't change. I mean, I think over time he mellowed a bit, but I mean, it wasn't like I mean, he wasn't abusing me as an older person either, but I'm just saying, it's like, it was still my dad, but my whole perspective around that did. And I was able to experience my dad. And whenever I thought of my dad, I honestly just thought of how much I loved him. I didn't think about all the abuse. I didn't think about all the words that he said to me, although I could remember them. But that wasn't really what came up for me emotionally. It just came up for me emotionally was, I had released and forgiven the past, and I was free to just be in that space with my dad as he was, as he could be. In the last year of his life, I took care of him. I mean, we had him in our home for about a month, and then we found a memory care facility because he had dementia, and he was literally walking distance from my house, and I saw him just about every day for the last year of his life, and it was actually an amazing, incredible experience. And when he finally died, literally a year to the day that we got him home, um, it was weird. I describe it as a clean grief. Like, I was just sad that I wouldn't be able to talk to my dad again in this life. That was it. There was no, oh, I wish I would have, or oh, there was no, like, built all these regrets, all this unfinished stuff. There was just, I'm sad my dad's gone because I loved him. And so all I can say is that was my experience in this process. And for me, that's why I'm like, oh man, if that can flip my hatred for I mean, if that can flip that around, then I'm basically, yeah, okay. Because I hated him. And
Yeah,
that
I
was
think
my transformation.
I just wanted to add to that. What is so incredible about the process is, like Dan mentioned, that he didn't change, dad didn't change, his dad didn't go through the process. But what's so incredible is that you get to go through healing and it isn't contingent on them. They're not there. It doesn't, you don't have to have a conversation with them. You're not, it's all possible to get complete. We talk about that a lot, emotionally complete with these tools and doing the process by being heard by another person. And it's so very powerful. And I'd love, I think it would be so great, Michael, if you um, just even to have a chat with Dan, I think it would be awesome. Really, really powerful. And we love having you on these Zoom calls, by the way. I love seeing you on them. It's very encouraging.
Hi,
Definitely.
Vicky. This is England. May I
Yes,
say something?
Yeah.
England. Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you.
Listen, everyone that's on this call, this stuff works. It works. I'm telling you, it works. Um, I worked one-on-one with Vicky, and when I came into the program, I thought I was coming to deal with one issue, and when we got into it, it was something totally different. And I had to deal with my mom. And my mom wasn't dead. Believe me, she's alive and kicking. And it just, like she said, the skills, the tools and the skills that you learn, and having her be there and listening to all of my craziness and not judging me and being able to get those things out and being able to do my AFSs, um, which you may not be familiar with right now, but going through that and my timeline history and all of that, that stuff works. And I'm back again. I'm back again. And I guess I have something else, another person to work on now.
Mm.
And Vicky, you may know because my ex-husband, he died a month or so ago. So
Oh,
I'm ready
wow.
to deal with this. I'm
Mm.
ready
Mm.
to deal with
Oh.
this and to go through. Listen, I got my book right here, and it's all
Yes, ma'am.
marked up. You know,
Mm.
I've just been through a lot, but you get to
Wow.
you get to release
Mm.
release because sometimes I just wanted to kill my mom. I really did, but working through that with her, some weeks I didn't want to do it,
Mm.
but
Mhm.
doing it and working through it, and especially, I don't know if it's the writing, the things that you write, or the things that you actually verbalize. I don't know what it is,
Mm.
but all I can say is that this works because I came from a background where you didn't talk about anything and you stuffed your feelings. Okay. And if you did say something and they're looking at you like, what's wrong with you?
Mhm.
Mm.
Because you did say something. So
Mm.
I got a chance to work through all of that. And
Mm.
I'm back again because I know that this stuff works. And I have
Mm.
to work through some things in order to be able to move forward now, dealing
Yeah.
with my previous husband.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I just want to encourage everyone that um, I think you'll know when the time is right for you.
Yeah.
You will. And I hope I didn't take up too much time.
No.
But Vicky,
Oh,
it's good to see you again. Daniel, I
it's
didn't
so
work with you. It was just Vicky. It
Yeah.
was just Vicky. And she listened to all my madness sometimes
oh
and
my
helped me
gosh.
sort through it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we'll have to connect. We'll have to connect. We'll text tomorrow and set up time for
Yeah.
sure. Oh, it's so great to see you. So, so great. Yes, I can't wait to hear all that's happened since. Yeah.
Dietrich had
Yes,
a
and it's a
question.
very yes, Deetria. Where is that girl? Deetria.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was really intrigued by when you were talking about what was modeled to us in childhood and like how to deal with emotions. And I like as soon as you put that out there, I could envision my parents and my mother was all about stuffing. My dad was just straight deny it all, just and he's still like that to this day. And it was infuriating growing up in that household because I wasn't like them back then. I'm not like them now. And
Mhm.
even now, like not too long ago, I went to my dad and said something to him about my childhood, and his response was, "Oh, don't you go back there? Don't go back there." You know, instead of just answering my question or addressing the issue, is just this blatant like we don't do that. And
Mm.
but I was curious. You had mentioned like our coping mechanisms, and I definitely have a lot of coping mechanisms. But I just kind of wanted you to elaborate more, like the impact it can have when you're a child who is like you're in your personality and your very being. You're so different from your family, and to the point where you like I think I was definitely, and I don't know if this terminology is used in this format, but I know I was definitely the scapegoat in my family. But like
Mm,
I didn't take on their ways is what I'm saying, but yet and still I have these issues. You know, like I still have issues because like I don't deny my emotions, I don't stuff my emotions, but yet and still I'm traumatized. You know, like
Right.
if any of what I said makes sense, if you could speak to that a little bit
Mhm.
more.
definitely. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I was just going to say that, part of it is we see things modeled from our parents, and it usually has one of two effects on us. Either we're just sort of beaten down and molded into whatever shape they happen to be molding us into, or we fight that tooth and nail and we become the opposite. Like I did the opposite. It's like if my dad said blue, I said red. If he said black, I said white. If he said, you know, orange, I don't know what's the opposite of orange. Anyway, the bottom line is like, whatever he said, whatever he did, it was like the opposite. It was the opposite. And like I didn't care. He could be like, I'll give you $100 million. No, I want nothing. I mean, it just because the resistance in me was it was irrational, honestly. It was just because it was just the hatred in there. And so it usually has one of those two things. Either it pushes us to be exactly like that, or it pushes us to resist and do the exact opposite of that. But either way, we're kind of getting out of our design, which is to kind of process this so that we're not tethered to it. And so usually what ends up happening, like what happened for me, is then I found my coping mechanism was not so much adopting his ways as much as it was medicating myself from the feeling. So I had all kinds of stuff that I turned to in order to medicate and not feel that stuff. So when it comes to modeling, there's kind of a lot of different angles to it. It doesn't mean that you're going to do exactly what they do. You may be and it sounds like you were, that you sort of did the opposite, but you're still confronted with that pain doesn't go anywhere if it isn't processed. So then the next step is we medicate.
Yeah, because like for me, I can't live around my family of origin. Like I tried it a few different times as an adult. I've moved back to Flint, Michigan, and it failed miserable, at least 2 times that I can think of. And I always came back to California like, I can't.
Yeah.
Can't. And because it's so, in my very being, I'm so different than my family, but yet and still, like, that didn't protect me. I think that's what I'm getting at, that even though I went opposite of them, I'm still no better off. Like, I don't know what coping mechanisms I decided to have, but I know I didn't take theirs. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm not healthier than them. I'm not healthier.
Yeah, and I think that another thing that can tend to happen is that we will recreate similar relationships as in our adult life to try to kind of create it, to fix it or to make it work. So we tend to be attracted to or attract people into our lives like let's say your dad, you didn't deal, you don't talk about those things, so you'll be like kind of find yourself attracted to someone who's emotionally not available, who's emotionally not there, and it's not even a conscious thing, but we tend to also kind of be pulled towards that because ultimately it's what we know. It's a strange phenomena, but I think that part of that process of healing makes it so where we realize, oh, you know what, that's actually not enough for me. That's not what I want. But it's an interesting thing when you have the unhealed wounds in there that you try to heal them in all those ways. So by healing it here, then what happens is that you'll be amazed at who you'll attract into your life, friendships, relationships, but a different kind of person that is more in a way that's going to treat you the way that you're treating yourself.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
Dan and Vicky.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, I can totally relate to you. I responded, I was the scapegoat. I responded with a lot of anger. And, when I look back, it's like I was in that fight response. And when I was talking to Vicky, I'm going through this program right now, that I could express my emotions, but I wasn't really processing them.
Mm.
I could tell somebody, okay, I feel this, but I couldn't really, in a lot of ways, I guess what I know about myself is that I don't know how to be here for myself,
Mm. Yeah.
It's like I'm missing that connection to my own self of being accepting, and I've been in this life kind of chasing after acceptance externally,
Yeah.
trying to heal
Sure.
that rejection that I have of my own self, because that's what I experienced as a child, is feeling rejected. So it's, in a way, it's like I am like them, in the sense of I've been programmed to reject my true feelings, even though I can express them. I really haven't learned to truly, accept them and process them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Thanks for sharing that. That makes perfect sense.
That is such a good point, Jana, the difference between just expressing, because you could have angry outbursts, you can let someone have it, you can say all those things, but it isn't helping you process. But
Yeah.
you're not keeping it in, right? It's the opposite. But yes,
Yeah.
that's such a good point. It is different.
Yeah.
Ben, can I
It's
ask a question?
good.
What do you
Mhm.
think is so different about this than therapy?
Well, I think that, like I've done a lot of different modalities in therapy, and I don't want to paint this picture like it wasn't all helpful. I think there were some helpful aspects to it. But if I had to sort of generalize, um, it's kind of like if you had a cavity and you went to a dentist and they gave you a super high definition 4K image of that cavity, but didn't actually fill it. It's like that. It's like I've got
Right.
a
Yeah.
really, really clear idea of, I mean, and I've had conversations with people. This is what's interesting. I've had conversations with people that, um, are psych majors or have done that. And it's interesting. They know all of the lingo and they can
Mm-hmm.
talk. I've even had some friends over the years that have been therapists, and they can talk all of this lingo without it actually impacting their life in a real way. And their
Right.
marriages are struggling and kids. And again, I'm not like piling on. I'm just saying that, it's like the point is that clarity and awareness is not the same thing as healing.
Right.
Just
Right.
like
That's what
having
I asked. Yeah.
clarity of my cavity is not the same thing as having it filled.
Mm,
So I think there's benefit to it for sure. I don't think it's just this, useless thing, but I think that's the primary difference between the two.
thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Because I was telling Vicky, I feel like I have so much awareness after going through so much therapy, but now what? So I'm
Right.
aware of it. How do I get from here down to my heart and
Yeah.
actually feel something different?
Yeah. Michael,
Exactly.
you had a point. You're gonna.
No, I just had a comment about, if I can, the
Sure.
counseling. So in the my counseling experience, what I've experienced is that the counseling does a good job of addressing the reaction to the trigger, the
Hmm.
Mm,
behavior pattern, making me really aware of where I am reacting to a trigger event.
Sure.
But it really has done nothing to remove the trigger so that it doesn't continue to cause reactions. And so then it becomes a really mature and elaborate way to manage the reaction to what is uh, emotionally just triggering,
Hmm.
so that I look more like an adult in my reaction to that,
right.
without ever really getting to the place of dealing with the trigger. And I saw a video recently where it's not your reaction to the trigger, it's that the fact that you had a reaction means that there is a trigger. And this would be the ability to get rid of that trigger, that button altogether, so that it wasn't even there anymore.
Yeah. Very well said. Very well
Yep.
said. I
Absolutely.
I think with with the triggering event too. And also I think it'd be good to just point out like what GR does is it give like to the trigger, it gives you space to have a different emotional response. When the trigger is in place, you're just reacting. Trigger, reaction, trigger, reaction, trigger, reaction. And that trigger is tied to a whole series of events connected to our past. So what grief recovery does is it unlocks that and it just creates space for a different response. We still might blow it. We still might react in anger. We still, so I don't want to create this picture like those things still might happen, but what it does do that's really amazing is now there's a space that's created for a different response. And that's amazing. And I would point out too is that, after the healing has happened, there's still a habit that's around that. And so the healing happens relatively quickly, whereas the habit takes usually a bit longer to sort of be processed. But that's what, I think it does really just is creating that space for a different emotional response.
Yeah.
You had a question.
Yes. And I would just really wanted to say
Oh, yeah.
quick, thank you so much for that. That's really powerful. And I think one thing that I share often is that grief recovery is the idea is you are a fruit producing tree and you produce certain fruit in your life. And those are the results that you get. Those are the habits that you have. Those are all those things. And so if you prune a tree, you are going to get that same fruit back. The only way you can change your fruit is by digging up the roots and planting a new seed. And then you're going to get a different fruit and effortlessly. And I mean, not like without effort. I don't mean that, but it's a law. It's going to grow that way. So it's going to be different. And you'll look around and go, oh my gosh, like Dan said, I have a choice in how I react to this trigger. I have a choice where when we are wounded, we don't have a choice. We are triggered, we react. And that's because that part of us is actually protecting us and has a very strong role in our life. And until we heal and we're able to integrate with that part, it's like we're going to be in that fighting place. And it's so incredible when it happens because it really, you'll see it will be something very powerful. Thank you for that. Monique.
Hi, Vicky. Hi, Dan.
Howdy.
Howdy. Nice to see y'all. And hi, everyone. Well, first of all, I will say that Vicky's name has come up on multiple occasions, different people recommending that you need to work with Vicky, you need to work with Vicky. And I was thinking to myself, oh, you know what I went through wasn't that bad. I don't think I need that. That's only for people who went through all of these other things. That's not really for me. It's not that bad. But when I connected with her on that free consult, I literally remember I was sitting out on my deck talking to you, and you shared with me some things about what GR actually was. And I was like, oh, that's totally different than what I thought it was. And I remember, and I will tell you, there were times when I went through this program that it was so painful. I was like, I don't think I could finish this program. I need a break because I told Vicky, it felt like I opened Pandora's box and I didn't know what the heck was gonna come flying out of it. But I can tell you, like, literally just going through this program, and I told Vicky, it literally felt like before I was walking around in a fog and like I couldn't see like where to go. I couldn't see anything around me. I was just like one foot in front of the other, one foot in front, just out of habit. But then like going through the program, coming face to face, working through, it's literally like the fog rolled away and all of a sudden I could see, I could see where I was going. I could see, to where I wanted to go. And I mean, the only thing I regret was that I waited so long to actually get started. And since then, like we've done other things since I finished the first round of sessions, but that's literally the only thing that I wish that I had done it sooner. And I can see how, not having this resolved was poisoning so many things around me and I wasn't even aware of it, or that I couldn't even do anything about it if I was aware that I just felt like something wasn't quite right, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. So I just wanted to thank you, Vicky, and thank you, Dan, for your program. It absolutely is life-changing. I know you didn't create the program, but you're still delivering it and spreading this and bringing hope and bringing freedom, freedom from grief. And I just wanted to thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Monique.
Thanks, Cindy.
Yes. It is a joy to work with you. It really is. We are very, very lucky that we get to do what we do. We love, we love being able to do this. Yes. Yes. Does anybody have any other questions? I'm scrolling through to see if there's any that I missed, but yes, what we will do is you can go to the website Freedom from Grief, and there's a tab that says work with us. You can get to our Calendly link there, but you will be getting an email. And for being here, you're also going to be getting a really nice little ebook. So the ebook is going to have some of the information that we shared tonight, just for something that you have that's a good reminder. Every month we do a new webinar that has a new topic. Next month, we will be talking about holidays and surviving the holidays, how unresolved grief can affect us, especially when we are around family, or maybe we are not going to see family because of loss or because of where we live. There's all kinds of ways that grief can come in, and holidays can be that thing that kind of turns up the heat a little bit and makes us kind of think about those things. So next month's webinar will be on that. And we have a really great little ebook for that as well. So we love having you here. And if you are alumni, please come every month. We'd love to see you. And if you have any ideas and any topics that you think would be good to cover, let us know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Love that.
Let us know.
Quite a few, but we would love that. Yeah. Sorry, Dan, what were you saying?
No, I just saying, yeah, definitely let us know, because we appreciate that. And the holiday one is hard because, people have such a wide range. For some, holidays are like this warm, sentimental, nostalgic experience, and they maybe, it might be sad because maybe a family member who's no longer with them and stuff. And then you have the other, side of the spectrum where it's like holidays are where, our parents to gather so they can talk about how disappointed they are in our lives. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's the whole gamut, with holidays, that people experience. So
Yeah, so I think it'll be a good one. Let you all know if you have any friends or anybody, they can also reach out to us. We're happy to do a consultation. We love just talking to people, hearing their stories, and really what it is sharing how this can meet them right where they are, because they can meet you right where you are. So with that, I can't think of anything else to cover. You will get an email, and that email will give you the link for the replay. It'll also give you the ebook, and keep your eye out. We'll be letting you know about the next webinar in the next week or so. And I think that's it. So for that, we will sign off. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much. If anybody stop recording, I will stop that right now.